I want to talk about how when she found out her father was a genocidal murderer, she's like, I'm shattered to pieces. Cut to 40-minute sex scene.
Oh my, that was so bad.
There are pornos that are shorter than this.
I hated it. I was like, skip ahead. My goodness gracious. I was reading on my Kindle, and it's like, it started at like 80%, and it wasn't done until it was like 87%.
I counted, the entire chapter was 40 minutes long. So, anyway, I think we're good to start.
Hello and welcome to Your Favorite Book. I'm Mallory.
I'm Tanner.
We're siblings.
We like reading books.
Today we will be talking about The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent.
Caw. Do vampires make cawing sounds?
Yours do.
Or do they make moaning sounds?
Oh.
Because they're so sexy.
It's probably moaning then.
This book was sexy as hell, folks.
Yeah,
so
you can
better
tell because of the
buckle
name.
Up. Yep. One thing I did not realize before we decided to do the Vampire Readathon, which this is the third book in our Vampire Readathon for October, is that vampires apparently have lots of sex. And I was not prepared for that for this series, which is naive of me. But I just don't read these books.
I feel like I should have told you that. I'm so sorry.
I didn't know. I've never really read a vampire book before.
I feel like vampiric culture is steeped in sexuality.
Well, we read Twilight first, and then I was like, oh yeah, I remember.
It's a purity
People
culture.
are attracted to vampires. They're probably the sexiest monster.
I think it depends on who you ask, but I think a lot of people vampire would be
objective.
top answer.
And then number 2 is the Loch Ness Monster.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the new hot romantasy trend. Have you heard?
I guarantee we could find several books about the Loch Ness Monster, actually. Yeah. It'd be easy.
Where it's actually just a mermaid, but with a human bottom and a fish top. All right, that's the next book you have to write. Get on it.
Okay, I'll start right now.
And you'll make $1 gazillion billion.
I would.
Well, this book, I thought you had read before because we didn't talk very much while we were reading this book. Usually we do. Because you were away. You abandoned me. You went on vacation.
I went on vacation.
And I was like, this is such a Mallory book while I was reading it. I was like, this is basically Fourth Wing meets Throne of Glass meets Bonesmith meets Twilight meets The Hunger Games.
All my favorite books, really.
Yeah, meshed into one. And not always in the best ways. But I was shocked to find that this was your first time reading this book.
Yeah, I've never read it before. I have a friend, Jill, who we share book recommendations all the time. And she...
You have a friend?
She's actually my only friend.
I'm
so
shocked.
It's just the one.
Okay.
But she recommended this to me a while ago. She was like, you're going to love it. You are going to love it. And I just haven't ever gotten to it yet. So I was glad that we're reading it for the podcast. And I did love it.
I knew that you would.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and so by cause and effect, it's only natural that I would hate this book.
Did you hate it?
No, I didn't hate it.
You just didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, I just don't like reading these types of books.
Totally understandable.
But I can still see it through an objective lens and say, okay, there are some good things here.
Like it.
Yeah, I know why my sister likes it.
Yeah.
It's about it's an epic fantasy vampire book. It really is the meeting place between Twilight and Fourth Wing, I think.
For sure.
Where there's not a love triangle like in Fourth Wing. It is about a main character named Araya, I believe. That's how it's pronounced in the audiobook. I listened to the audiobook. Yeah. Falling in love with this very handsome...
tall, dark, handsome stranger.
Yes.
Who's a vampire.
Named Rain.
With an H.
Wait, R-H-A-I-N?
Oh, yeah, the name spelling in this book, they really fall under the curse of fantasy names.
Yeah, that's every fantasy book.
R-A-I-H-N.
I'm reading one right now with a character named Logan, but it's spelled with an E instead of an A. Or Logan, maybe it's pronounced.
Maybe it is Logan.
But that's fantasy. They just they have to make up different names.
They take a Scrabble board, they write a regular name, they add a couple letters, shake it around, and respell it.
I'm going to change my bad guy's name from Hitler to Hutler.
So true.
Yeah,
oh
that's
my
every
gosh,
fantasy
that happens
book.
all the time.
But this vampire, love interest, Rain, he's not like all the other vampires.
he has a little bit of kindness in his heart, and he's funny.
Anything...
Vampires aren't funny in this book. Canonically, vampires aren't funny. And she's like, wow, he's funny.
But she thinks he's funny.
Yeah, she thinks he's funny.
I didn't think he was funny. It was like very typical like rom-com banter funny.
Quippy, stupid.
It was fine. It's not like as cringy as Fourth Wing.
Yes.
Fourth Wing dialogue
it's bad.
Twilight dialogue
is bad.
Yeah, like singes your eyebrows while you're reading it. It's so bad.
Mm-hmm.
This was much better written and less cringy. There were some cringy things about the writing, but that's because I felt like she was trying to write like, oh my God, who wrote Gideon the Ninth? Tamsin Muir.
Oh yeah, she just doesn't quite have the skill set to do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where she's like trying to make these characters funny and quippy and clever, and they are, but she's just, Tamsin Muir is so idiosyncratic.
Yep.
Where it's like she can be vulgar and hilarious, and it doesn't feel like she's saying the F word too often.
No, but I think it's also because that's, if I sat down and talked with Tamsin Muir, I think that's how she would talk.
Yeah. And I think she'd just be funny.
I love that about her.
Me
and then
too.
when people try to emulate that, it's just like, oh... It's like if SpongeBob hosted RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah, it's like you're not made for this, sweetie.
Just don't.
Yeah, like go back to making Krabby Patties and catching jellyfish with your gay boyfriend.
Yes. So maybe he could host RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah, maybe he could actually. Well, he could do it for like a children's version show. We're kind of getting off track.
I'm so sorry. I had to make the analogy.
So Carissa Broadbent. The tone of this book is very epic fantasy, so it's very serious and dramatic.
There's a lot of political intrigue.
There's a lot of world building. Yeah, there is. Yeah. It happens kind of in the background.
Yes.
The main character, Araya, is a young woman who goes into a Hunger Games style trial to become a vampire.
Yeah.
Because she's the only human in this vampire society. And vampires rule the world.
Yeah, and the winner of this battle royale type thing gets one wish granted from the vampire's goddess that they worship.
One of their gods.
One of their gods, but she is like the gods of the vampires. She created the vampires.
Yeah. The goddess of death, Nyxia.
Yes.
So there's tons of lore and world building, which were things that I enjoyed.
I did too.
That's part of what made it more palatable. This was kind of like, okay, I hated Twilight because it was so boring.
Yep.
It was just a romance and Edward was just a vampire, kind of. This is like, let's soak Twilight in some of the things that Tanner likes. It's like if they had like a tub filled with like some mixture that was like epic fantasy stuff, then you just like dump Twilight into that and pull it back out, it would turn into this book.
Yes, yes.
So that's why I enjoyed it more than Twilight. Like it didn't feel like it was pulling teeth because there was some cool mythology. Yeah. It made me want to read mythology books. It made the vampires more epic fantasy.
yeah, I liked it.
Gave them some more rules, gave them big wings and different powers. Like they could use magic.
And like tiers of different types of vampires too, like lower level, lower powered versus high powered.
And different races as well. Like one of the conflicts in this world is that there's a sect of vampires that are in charge. Led by Vincent, the king vampire, which is such a terrible name for your villain. Vincent?
Why did she name him that?
Vincent makes him sound like a third grader, right?
Yeah.
Evil Vincent the bully, but he's like a nerdy kid. Anyway, the names are not great in this book, but not. It's just a minor nitpick. And the sect of vampires that are in charge, I can't remember the name of what that race is.
I can't either, to be honest with you.
But they're at war with a different race of vampires.
I think there are 3.
Okay. Epic fantasy stuff, right?
Yes.
So the world does feel pretty big. The problem is, and this is my first problem with the book, is that it felt like they over-explained all of their world-building elements up front, and it didn't leave any room for mystery. Like, yes. You know what I mean? And it kind of felt like I was reading a sequel, as opposed to... You know, the first book where
discovering it slowly. Yeah.
Yes. So, and I know this is a problem that you've mentioned you had as well. And I wonder if it's because of the world building.
I think so too. I felt like I was reading a sequel initially. Like I genuinely thought maybe I had purchased the second book instead of the first book. Because it just kind of, they hit the ground running with the plot, with the characters' relationships. Like, they just get going from the first sentence with a lot of intense things that have been set up. And they're explaining them very quickly. And even, like, this competition battle thing that she's going into, the rules aren't really laid out.
And you also don't know what the challenges are.
You don't know what the goal is. You don't know why the main character is different.
You don't know who can participate in the challenge.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of explanation or exposition going on in the way that I have grown to expect it to be laid out.
Yeah.
So at first I kind of felt like, oh, we're going. Oh, wait, have I missed something here? I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like we're saying this every week, but I wish I had more time to review these books. But also I don't want to spend too much time on each of them. But it's a weird mix of, like, there's too much exposition with world building stuff, like here are the races of the vampires. Oh, and Vincent, he killed his mother and his father. Oh, and here's this character Vincent's telling me about, instead of me meeting that character and them explaining me to their problems. Like, there's one character named Isaac or Isaiah or something that she competes with in this game that she never has an actual conversation or a scene with.
It's just between other people.
Yes. So it's just between other people, or it's from, like, Araya's internal dialogue, where she's like, Isaac was harmed by his vampire parents or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like in the first chapter you're like, oh, there's a class A vampire and we don't like him because class B and C did this, and it's like, oh, okay.
Oh, and also there's magic. Vincent's really good at this magic. I can only use a little bit. Like, it's simultaneously too much exposition, not just about the world building or the politics, but also about characters and their relationships with each other.
You could show those things.
That would be so much better.
You could have a moment where Vincent is like, oh, go do this enchantment for me. And she's like, I'll do my best, but, I struggle with that. And he's like, it's not that hard. It's just like this. And then he does it perfectly and she can't do it. Like, that could be a very quick, easy way to showcase that, instead of her being like, once again, my dad's powerful and I'm not.
Yeah. It simultaneously over-explains those things without showing them in a way that's easier and more entertaining to absorb that information. And it doesn't explain enough about, like, what's happening with the story.
It's a bizarre mix.
It is. And I think it's the worst part of the book, unfortunately, is the introduction.
Yeah.
It gets better at those things over time, I think. Like, for example, there are scenes later on in the book when the characters have to work together to overcome some challenges. And they have to learn specific skills in order to do that. And I thought that stuff was shown a bit better.
I did too.
And she pulls back on explaining all of the world building stuff over time, because she feels like, well, I've given you my info dump in the first few chapters and I don't have to explain it ever again.
Yeah, I think that's a disservice to your book and your readers. I'd rather have it evenly paced throughout the whole thing versus like, oh, you got to do all the brunt work at the beginning, then you can just enjoy what's happening. I'm like, what? Who does that?
It should be a smoother rant.
Yes.
And I feel like maybe she learned those skills better as she went on.
Maybe she did, yeah.
And I could totally see that. The introduction was not very captivating. The most captivating part about it is, honestly, the prologue, which starts with Vincent saving this girl from a burning wreckage. A bunch of vampires about to eat her. She's like 9 or something, or like she's smaller, so she looks like she's 6, but she's actually 9. That's her part of her character. Yeah, she's petite and she's not really demure. But she's mousy and like she's hides in the background. So typical romantasy protagonist stuff.
So small and hot, but she's stronger than anybody else, but she doesn't have any muscle mass.
And she also doesn't like to wear makeup.
Yes, she's too pretty.
But she does like to wear it to be pretty. But she can't because she has to survive. Anyway, so they describe pretty well Araya's character in that moment where it's like her family's taken away from her, Vincent's taking her under his wing, literally, because vampires have wings in this book. And she's raised as a human in this vampire world, and part of her misbelief is that she feels unsafe. And she has to be vicious and guard herself from other people. She can't trust anybody except for Vincent.
Yeah, it's a really great setup, and you can you can empathize with that as a reader, and you can see, oh yeah, if I were in a pit full of vampires or just people I don't feel safe around, I would definitely keep my guard up all the time and do what it took to survive and make it through, you know?
Yeah. And I think probably her character arc is the best written part about this book.
I do too.
They do a good job of explaining her worldview right away at the beginning. They hint at some other things that happen to her in her past throughout the book that she struggles with, that she has to come to terms to. It's debatable whether or not she overcomes those traumas in an effective way, which we can get to in the future. But that was more appealing to me than the world building.
Yeah.
Like, the world building and the relationships and the politics and the plot was more of a slog to get through at first.
Yeah, I agree. And she's also the author is very consistent with the character, and it feels the same the whole time. Sometimes you get an author who tries to write a protagonist that's that kind of guarded, jaded, angry, and damaged person, and it like just flips back and forth between what's the reason, stuff like that. But I think the author is very successful with that.
Yeah, it takes her a while to warm up to characters in this book that she can trust, that are true friends to her. It's kind of the opposite to Twilight, where it's like in Twilight, Bella tames Edward. In Serpent, Araya is tamed by Rain.
Yeah.
Who's the love interest in the story. Rain he's a vampire from the bad race of vampires that Vincent has told her to be most careful of for whatever reason. I don't know. They don't really explain or show that very well. And over time, I thought this was the best part of the book. They have good scenes between Rain and Araya and another friend, Moshi?
Misha?
Yeah. Where it's like, the story's very obvious, right? The main character's a girl who doesn't trust anybody. So she's going to have to learn how to trust people. And so put her in a room with some friends that treat her nicely. They have some fun scenes. They go to a bar. Rain proves to her that he's more trustworthy by saving a girl, even though he's a vampire. And he's like, can't resist his bloodlust.
Yeah.
So all that stuff was done well. And I think that's the core of the book.
I think so too. And it's a very believable and fun journey for the reader to go on to experience those things with Araya as she learns about the people around her and about her misconceptions that she has intentionally gathered upon her existence in a world full of vampires who want to kill her. And it's fun to watch her battle with the inner truth or maybe her inner beliefs versus what she's seeing happening around her.
Definitely. And not all of those walls that she's put up around herself have been put up just by her. They have been ingrained in her by her adoptive father, the king of the vampires, Vincent.
Why'd you name him
king
that?
of the vampires.
I would rather have
evil.
another crappy fantasy name than Vincent.
You should call him Hutler. Hutler, king of the vampires. That's way more menacing.
Yes, it's so scary.
Hutler would be better than Vincent, okay?
Yeah, it would. Anything would be.
Hutler the butler. Maybe that's more of a butler name.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah. Vincent, I thought, okay, you have problems with him, and I do too. The book portrays him at the beginning as someone that she should trust.
Yeah.
That's the intention. As he's the only person she can trust.
The only person who's ever taken care of her, protected her, given her the tools she needs to survive.
Yes. Teaching her how to fight against vampires in a world filled with vampires. You get the impression that she is like kind of a Rapunzel type character, locked away in a tower.
Yeah.
Father won't let her go visit other vampires, and he's told her, like, if you step foot outside, you'll die. I don't think that stuff is explained very well. Like, there isn't a scene where she's locked in a room and she's trying to get out, and her father's like, don't leave, the vampires will kill you.
Yeah. And she, like, leaves secretly to go murder vampires, which was fun. But
we don't find out that Vincent isn't okay with that until the end.
Yes, thank you.
And Vincent doesn't say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this ever. She's like, Vincent probably wouldn't like me to do this.
Yeah, he just doesn't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? The vampire with super hearing and has eyes all over the city doesn't know you've been going out to kill all his vampire underlings?
Yeah, the most powerful vampire in the world. Who's been watching and monitoring your every step and treats you like a rose in a vase.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know that she's going out there killing vampires. Yeah. There's stuff like that where it's a little bit loose because they're trying to write Vincent as like Stockholm Syndrome captor relationship.
Yes.
And I don't think it's done very successfully at first of establishing it that way.
I agree. I was extremely uncomfortable with the relationship between the two of them.
I was confused too.
At first when I read it, I was like, okay, they've used the words father and daughter several times, but I feel like it's sexual in the beginning. Like, I was like, am I crazy? Does this mean something else? Like, it was uncomfortable and weird.
Yeah, even in the prologue. Well, it starts in the prologue.
Yes,
because
it's like the king of the vampires didn't know that the fragile young girl before him would be his
6-year-old
saving and undoing. And I'm like,
what is this language? I think they say verbatim something like he loved her as soon as he saw her.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
It just
like,
feels weird.
Why?
There needs to be a more clear relationship going either direction.
Yeah. Because if you're writing him as a
creepy predator,
a PDF file, then you need to
go
be clear about that and say
something
he's
about
the bad guy.
Say something about it too.
Yeah.
Don't just be like, oh.
Right. Instead, I think she's trying to do two things at once. Mm-hmm. She's trying to do the Stockholm Syndrome thing, which is similar to, this is why it kind of reminded me of Bonesmith, which is like the first book we've reviewed. Don't go watch that video. Well, you can watch it, but it's bad. Where the main character learns over time that their father has been lying to them. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert, by the way, 20 minutes into the review. Spoiler alert. And they're also trying to write him as a morally gray character. Did I say that already?
Yeah, no, you're good. Okay.
They're trying to write him as a morally gray character.
Yeah.
Where he is a loving, caring father for her. His intentions are in the right place, but the execution is... there's a lot left to be desired.
Yeah, it is a huge trend right now to have morally gray characters. And
oh, really?
Yes.
So how recent is this book?
This was published this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was either this year or last year. I know book 2 came out this year for sure, and it was pretty close together. So it's recent. You can tell it's on trend with all of the current romantasy trends. But morally gray characters right now are people's favorite in the world, but the execution of morally gray isn't always successful.
It's really hard to do.
I think this is a pretty great morally gray character. Mm-hmm. Most people just do morally gray as in he's perfect, happy, and lovely, and then he had one bad thing he did once. Or they'll be like, oh, he's killed hundreds of humans, but it's okay because he's hot. Mm-hmm. You know, it's difficult. I think this is a good example of morally gray. I think it's okay.
Yeah. I think it's okay as well. Mm-hmm. And when you mention that, like, the people who get it wrong, they think morally gray means you show the black and the white. When it's like, no, morally gray character means they're always in the middle.
It's in the name, you guys.
Yes. Where it's like, he's always a good person until he genocides an entire nation.
Yeah, that's not morally gray.
Yeah. It's like, where did that decision come from?
No.
Someone like Vincent, you should be able to anticipate him being capable of such horrific violence or something that is morally wrong that you'd be like, that's not who you are at your core because I know you're capable of better things.
Yes.
And I think he is kind of an average written morally gray character.
I think so too.
I don't have a ton of experience reading grimdark stuff, and that's where there are a lot of morally gray characters. I like grimdark. It's okay for me. But it's not what I turn to. I go to more like comedy stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's like the heroes are the good guys and the bad guys are the bad guys.
Yes.
Because real life is filled with morally great characters, and that's depressing.
It is.
Something like Game of Thrones. Thank you, brain. Has a lot of morally gray characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what's so captivating in a story about characters like that is because you know that these people who care about each other will eventually hurt each other.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to write a character like that.
And it's hard to make it believable and not go too far with it.
Yes.
You know, you want your audience to still, at least to some degree, go, okay, I can see where that came from, or I can see what they're coming from.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
I think morally gray characters are pretty rare in fiction for that reason. Maybe they're even rare in life, because I'm trying to think more deeply about like where the morally gray characters are in Game of Thrones. And now that I think about it, in Game of Thrones, what makes that story interesting is that the protagonists, the Stark family, they're supposed to be the good guys that win the day in a typical epic fantasy. And when they do honorable things, they're punished for it by the story. That's partially what was so captivating. And so maybe it isn't, maybe it doesn't have a lot of morally great characters. It's been a while since I've watched it. But thinking about Vincent, like, he doesn't, he meets with Araya often while she's going through this trial, whatever it is, wherever it takes place.
Yeah. The Moon Palace.
The Moon Palace, but the Moon Palace is a weird place because it's like, is it real? Is it not? Can you travel to different places? The settings were like nebulous.
Yeah.
Anyway, you slowly see him do things throughout the story, like hurting her friends. There's a war between the Vincent vampires and the Rain vampires.
Yeah. It's like Blood of the Night versus Blood of the Blood. I don't even remember.
Yeah. And Vincent, he like treats Araya like a gym. And then she begs of him not to torture her friend, not a love interest yet, Rain. And he does it anyway. And then she's like, now I don't trust him anymore.
Yeah, now she's like, I don't know what to believe because I don't think he would lie to me, even though all he does is lie to her. But she's like, but my friend's hurt, but my daddy promised.
Yeah. Maybe
it's bizarre.
Maybe the reason why he doesn't quite feel morally great to me is because Vincent has been evil all along. Yeah. And it's just Araya learning that's who he truly is. So he's not morally gray. He's just a bad person.
And he's just hiding that part of himself from her.
Yeah. And she doesn't see his behavior towards her as predatory.
And she chooses not to as well.
Yeah.
Because Rain and Misha both try to point it out to her, be like, hey, so about your dad, what's going on there? And she's like,
I love my daddy.
Yeah.
No, don't ever say anything bad about Vincent, which makes sense for her worldview.
Yeah.
Because she was, Rapunzel style character, right? And the only person she ever knew growing up, she only had one friend ever, and he betrayed her. And Vincent, like, used that opportunity to
teach her a big lesson.
Yeah, to say, like, never trust a vampire ever unless it's me. So maybe that's why he doesn't feel morally great. Araya, like, discovering that he's a bad person, I thought that arc was done well. Yeah. So
I liked it too until the end.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I liked it until the end.
Yes, when she finally realizes that he's a bad person, and she basically forgives him for all of his bad stuff. She doesn't say that I forgive you for all of your evil stuff.
No, but she's like, okay, spoiler alert for the very, very ending. Yeah, he gets murdered by Rain, her love interest, and then all of a sudden she's like, my dad was the best man in the whole world, even though he just killed thousands of innocents. Yeah. And I confronted him about it, and he lied to me about to my face again. Oh, but I miss him. Yeah. And I'm like, what?
And I think that's where she failed at trying to write him like a morally great character. Yes. It's like, oh, but there was good in him all along. He's a complex character. Not really. He's not complex.
He's selfish.
He is selfish. Yeah. And he's a genocidal... A vampire has been alive for... That will do anything
to secure his power and his bloodline.
Yes. There's so much that she doesn't know about him. Yeah. And I don't know if... And it does feel like, okay, Araya is really stupid. And the author is trying to write Vincent like a morally gray character by having her either forgive him or to only choose to see the good in him. Yeah. When it's like, he only raised you to become his, like, child bride. Yep. And you aren't seeing that. So... It's problematic in a lot of ways.
Not once does she go, wait, why does my dad want me to marry him once I get all this power? Yeah. Not once.
Not literally marry him, but in ritual. Yes. So when the promise that she wants to, or the gift that she wants to request from the god once she wins this trial is to become a Corianthin or something.
Consorte, I think is what it was.
Consorte, yes, thank you. There's a fantasy word for it. It might be a real world word, but I haven't heard of it before. Yeah. Which basically means that she could be a vampire, a powerful human that lives forever. Basically a vampire that doesn't need to drink blood. And she would commit herself to Vincent, and the two of them would rule the world forever. Like, that's her dream.
Yeah, it's weird.
It is strange. Like, why does Vincent want that? Like, I thought it was going to be something like we find out that Vincent is dying.
Yeah.
And he wants to, like, turn his daughter into some kind of, like, battery for him. Mm-hmm. And then he would lock her away in this tower.
Yeah.
And then she would never leave because he's got her brainwashed, and then he would continue being the king of the night. I thought that's what was going to happen.
Yeah, it would be more interesting.
Instead, I don't know what his intentions were because he gets murdered.
That's part of the issue, too, that I had in the beginning was I don't know what the intentions are with their relationship.
Yeah.
What are you trying to say?
I kind of liked it
Not
at the
you,
beginning.
the author.
Oh, okay. What I'm trying to say is this book rocks my socks off. No.
Yes.
I think keeping Vincent's intentions cloaked at the beginning is important, but you should learn that by the end of the story.
Yes.
Like, why did he want to turn her into a consorte? Is he a creep? Or does he have some, like, magical evil villain shit plans for her?
Or is it, like, really just daddy-daughter date for eternity?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know what it is.
I don't know. And there is a moment when Rain finds out that that's what she's going to wish for, and he is like, what the...
Rain finds out that that's what Araya is going to wish for when she wins the trial.
Yeah, like for Vincent's behalf. And he does freak out and is like, what? Wait
Your
a minute.
dad's a creep. Your dad's a creep. Your dad's a creep.
So I was glad that there was one moment there, but even she's like, it's no big deal. We've been playing this forever. Like, since he met me.
Yeah. And
it's not
when
weird
I was
at
6
all.
years old.
Right?
And he's planned for me to be his child bride.
So I will say there is at least a moment.
Okay, in Vincent's defense.
Oh, no.
Okay, well, I'm just saying. In Vincent's defense, if you want a wife that will do everything you want them to, it's best to raise them first. Because then you can brainwash them and they do all your chores for you.
And isolate them. Don't let them hang out with other people.
Yes, that's true love. Okay, so
well, she nailed it.
So the real problem is, and maybe we missed it. This is the first time we've read it. It feels problematic. We're going on vibes based, but we did read the book. Mm-hmm. I took notes. I did my best to understand it. Is that Rain, when he finds out that Vincent has, like, raised Araya to be his child bride or whatever, and he freaks out. At the end of the story, Araya is like, oh, I miss my dad. He's the greatest. Even though Rain has told me, like, his plans for me, what it means to be a consortium is bad.
Right? Like, I didn't understand that at all. I feel like Raya and Rain's relationship grew so much, and she learned a lot about herself and about vampires, and then she just ignores all of it.
Yeah, at the very end.
What?
And did it come at the cost of, like, trying to be marketable and write a morally gray character? And if that's the case, then it comes at the cost of the story.
Yeah.
And you've written a really problematic relationship, and you've tried to promote it or purport it as a positive one.
Yeah.
When it's too ambiguous, you have to be more upfront about what Vincent wants with Araya.
And I don't know if
But he's dead, so we don't know.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know if we'll ever get the answer there because he dies at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I haven't read the second book. You haven't read the second book. Maybe there's a ghost moment. Maybe there's a journal she finds.
Yeah, maybe so.
In fact, I would enjoy that at least because then you could get some closure on, I raised you for this purpose and I am a creep.
And then Araya could be like, okay, let's
I'm on
close
Rain's
the book on
side.
that.
Yeah.
I don't like my dad anymore.
Yeah.
Or you could have her just be, like, still brainwashed and you're trying to say something about, like, Stockholm Syndrome or problematic relationships with unbalanced power dynamics. Mm-hmm. Something like that.
Yeah.
Instead, at the moment, it just leaves a weird taste in your mouth.
Yes.
It's strange.
It's just off-putting.
It's really off-putting.
It's bizarre.
Off-putting. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth, like off-putting. Statler meet Wardle. Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, I think it was bizarre, and I think it would have been better if she had leaned heavily in one direction or another.
Yeah, forget trying to write a morally gray character. Like, I don't know. Writing morally gray characters is tough. Mm-hmm.
Especially if you kill them at the end of the book and you don't ever find out what their intentions were.
I know. Like, you could... And I guess Vincent kind of is a secondary character, but he's so important to Araya's relationship and her worldview and her character arc that you kind of have to keep Vincent as, like, the bad guy that she learns is a bad guy throughout the story. And then she gains some confidence and says, no, I deny you, father.
I'm breaking free, Mother Gothel.
Yeah, Exactly.
But we don't get that. We get you're right all along. Continue to abuse me,
and I
Mother
failed
Gothel.
you. I'm sorry.
My magic hair didn't heal you enough.
Yes. It also gets worse
bizarre.
because at the end of the story, okay, only one person can win. It's a Hunger Games style event. Araya and Rain are the last two people to fight in the arena. Very Hunger Games. It's like Peeta versus Katniss, and Peeta will obviously sacrifice himself. So Katniss will win. Same exact thing here. Araya wins. The goddess shows up.
And she has to kill Rain in order to win.
Yes, thank you. She does kill Rain.
And he's baiting her the whole time.
Yeah.
To force her to get upset, and she gets upset and is about to kill him and is like, oh, I can't do this. And then he pulls the blade into his heart, so he's the one who kills himself.
Super original.
Yes.
The action wasn't that interesting for me. As someone who's been spoiled by great action stories in the past, that's the hard thing with doing reviews, is that I just kept comparing it to books that I loved.
Yeah.
Like Red Rising and Gideon the Ninth, and I'm like, you could have done this better like this book.
Yeah.
Which is an instinct that you have to resist. Because it's its own thing.
Yes.
Anyway, Rain dies. She wins the boon from the goddess of death, and she says, I wish Rain had lived. Rain comes back to life. Rain kills Vincent because there's a war between those two vampire races.
He grants his wish, which is there's those 3 vampire races. Only 2 of them have surviving heirs that are alive. So his wish is to pick up that heir and turn himself into the heir of the next vampire throne for that bad race that everybody hates.
Yeah.
So he gets super, super powerful. He's now the king of that other race, whatever. And then he kills her dad.
And that moment apparently shows Araya that she was wrong to trust Rain in the first place. When her character arc was all about learning how to trust people again.
Yeah.
And even her father told her, don't trust these bad vampires. Which is racist.
Yeah.
And Rain is like, I'm not like those bad vampires. Or my people aren't a monolith.
Yeah.
So at the end of the story, like, Rain betrays her. And it, like, proves everything that she learned along the way wrong.
Yep.
And proved Vincent right. And Vincent was a good guy this entire time.
It's just confusing.
Even though we see a scene where he genocides a nation of an entire people, not just any innocent people. Like, a civilization where Rain was kidnapped from. Right? And she's like, I want to go back to my nation to find, like, friends and family who might know me.
Yeah, and it's where Araya is from, too.
And then Vincent destroys that entire nation.
Yeah. Like, overnight.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. It felt a little bit like... It almost felt like that was a first draft ending, and she 4th drafted the rest of the book.
Yeah.
That's how it felt to me.
Yeah.
And that also is a current trope in romantasy, which is they don't trust each other, they fall in love. At the end, the boy betrays the girl. It happens all the time. I hate it, actually. I don't enjoy it. And then for book 2... they go on the same exact emotional journey.
That's how
of not trusting each other and then trusting each other again. It's boring. We've already read that. We've already explored all of those relationship dynamics. Think of something new.
Well, it's interesting because at the end of this book, I did feel exhausted because I was like, well, first of all, it took a while to get to the 3rd act because there was a 35-minute sex scene that we had to witness.
Oh my gosh.
But the end of the book, Vincent is murdered by Rain. Rain and Araya have to become king and queen at this new nation, and Rain is like, we'll be husband and wife, and we'll build this new kingdom. Because Rain is more of a morally gray character than Vincent is.
Yeah.
Rain is like, he wants to build a better democracy and to treat people right. He values human life. So how do you build a moral society that is run by vampires? That has human civilians, because Vincent didn't value human life. But I could just sense that the second book was going to be Araya not trusting Rain, and then those two were going to have to learn how to trust each other and fall in love again. And it just felt exhausting. Like, we were already here. This is the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
When Araya doesn't trust Rain. It's like, oh my gosh, she just overcame this problem, didn't she? But now she's, nope. Right back at the beginning, where she doesn't trust anybody. Yeah,
and now she loves her dad again and wants to uphold his nation.
And doesn't trust vampires.
The way that he did the nation, which was to literally feed upon her people. Like,
I don't know.
What?
Like, where do you go with this? the next story that you have to tell is that Rain takes the place of Vincent, and she falls in love with a different vampire who takes the place of Vincent from the first book.
Maybe we'll finally get a triangle in book 2.
Maybe we will.
It's the only trope that she missed.
Yeah, and it's like she has to learn how to trust people again.
Yeah.
And of course, like, that will be a problem with her for her entire life, but I feel like she's just learning the same lesson in the same way.
Yeah.
Or that's what it felt like at the end of the book, is that she's going to have to go through that experience again.
It's bizarre. And I also wish that there was maybe more of a setup for Rain to have done what he did. Like, maybe a comment here or there that Araya was like, wait, what did you just say? And then he's like, don't worry about it. And he's like, you know, maybe foreshadowing that turn of events at the end or something. I don't know. Because
that's what Fourth Wing does better. Is in Fourth Wing, it's very it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
The main character doesn't, well, she doesn't have trust issues quite so much as Araya does.
Yeah, but their two people are pitted against each other and have hurt each other in the past.
Yes.
So,
and her boyfriend, she doesn't know if she can trust entirely. She gives him his whole heart, and then he betrays her in the end.
Yeah.
And now they don't know whether they can trust each other. It's like, we're doing this again. I wonder if this trope of, like, I'm going to end my story with the two characters not trusting each other again. If they're trying to go for, like, that grimdark tone, where it's really dramatic, it's not very happy, and they're supposed to pull the rug out from under you. But that's really hard to do as a storyteller. Like, it's rare when it happens and it's successful, I think. I don't know. You could do things like indicate Rain's mysterious past more as something that she should be concerned about. But meanwhile, he does things like he doesn't drink her blood, even though he's in bloodlust and he has to drink in order to survive.
Yeah.
And she tames him with her feminine prowess, and she loves him. He loves her, so he doesn't drink her blood.
It's boring.
I don't know.
It's cringy.
Yeah. There's good stuff in this story, but it's soiled by the ending.
I agree. It just felt very out of the blue, and like it doesn't match what they've been setting up the whole entire time.
It also took away, like, Araya's satisfying character arc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, the lesson that she was supposed to learn is to trust people. And then the person that she should have trusted all along, which was her predatory father, was right. So
what?
That whole thing that you went through wasn't worth it.
Nope, you learned nothing. Go back to where you were.
Yep, you can't have any more friends.
It's so bizarre. And also, yeah, it just was weird. I didn't like that ending. Can we talk about the cast of characters?
Yeah.
There were like 4.
Yes. This is a weird complaint. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because Twilight has 2 characters.
It is a weird complaint. Actually, I disagree with you full-heartedly.
Full-heartedly?
Wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly disagree with you on that. But I feel like...
You can disagree with me, but that doesn't mean that you're right.
Yeah, that is true. I also have read more of the books, so I feel like maybe I just think there's more than there actually is in the first book.
That's what Twilight felt to me. It was just Edward and Bella the whole time.
Yeah, but the difference is that...
This is an epic fantasy, I get that.
Yes, and it's a battle royale with like 100 other vampires in it.
Yeah.
And we only get to know 2 of the vampires and Araya, and then her dad. And that's really it.
Yeah.
There's a couple side characters here and there, like Isaiah. He's a good, interesting character and a good foil for Araya. But
how is he a foil for her?
Isn't he the guy who has a limp?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a vampire, but he's not good enough to be a vampire. His family knew that he would be the next heir in their matriarch, patriarch, vampiric family, and so they purposefully disable him. And he's there to compete nonetheless, even though he can't fly, he can't walk.
Oh, okay.
And so she sees the weakness in him that she sees in herself, and he makes it very, very far into the thing, and she ends up being the one who has to kill him, and he does say, I'm glad it was you who had to kill me. So there's some good comparisons there of, weak people, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like there needed to be more scenes between her and someone like Isaiah then.
Yeah, maybe Isaiah's like, hey, you don't know the past of Rain.
I feel like they didn't know each other at all.
I know. No.
He was just kind of there.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of the relationships felt. It's like, oh, she doesn't know him personally, but he was a courtier in this, and then he went to this party once, and my dad talked to him.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt like there weren't that many deep relationships, and I think the story would have benefited with maybe some more social hierarchy stuff.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes in the book is actually in the Vampire Hunger Games, at some point, teams need to be formed for whatever reason. Who knows? Mm-hmm. There's 5 challenges in 4 months. And for like the last few challenges, you have to work together with strangers. Mm-hmm. And Araya works with Rain and Rain's best friend, who's also a vampire named Misha. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite scenes in the book is just between Misha and Araya when they're having dinner together. And Araya is, she's not working well with Rain when they're supposed to fight together because she doesn't trust him. She has to trust him in order to fight together, right? And Misha says something like, the goddess Nyaxia, whatever her name is.
I think that's it.
The person who created these trials were created to mirror her ascension to godhood, which was cool.
Yeah, I liked that.
And she had to kill her husband to become a god. So she sacrificed what she wanted. She sacrificed her love to get what she wanted. And that does happen at the end of the book. She does the main character, she does give up what she wants, which is power to be with Vincent, to save the person that she loves. So she does the opposite of what that goddess does, and she's punished for it. And Misha says, yeah, the goddess did kill her husband for power, but she's probably really unhappy. It's like, that's a nice little scene.
Yeah.
It's someone different from Rain. It's someone different from Vincent. There's tons of conversations between just Vincent and Araya and just Araya and Rain. That it was nice to get a break with Misha, who's a different type of character. She's described as more like eccentric and more personable, less put together as all the other vampires.
She's the Alice Cullen of the book.
Sure. Is she from Twilight?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
She plays more of a role in the second book, I imagine, Alice. Because we're not going to get into it. Yeah, I would have appreciated more things like that too.
Yeah,
I thought Misha was fun.
Right after we start to explore that relationship, Misha gets gravely injured and is sent away from the competition, and we don't see her for the rest of the book.
Yeah.
We don't even see her. We don't even see her at the epilogue when everything is good and fine. We don't even get and Misha came back and was healthy. We don't even get that.
Yeah, we don't.
It's
and
bizarre.
Misha was kind of like a bright spot in the story.
Yeah.
And the overall tone just felt dark without someone like that. Yeah, I totally agree with you. For a book with, maybe it's like she could only handle a smaller cast of characters. And for what she did write, I thought it was done well.
Yeah.
Her relationship with Rain and Vincent were the most interesting things about the book. And I thought their arcs and those characters changing alongside each other was interesting.
Yeah.
And handled well until the end.
I do too.
But the problem is that there is a big cast of characters. It's just we don't get to know any of them.
And then it's like, this person died, this person died, this person died. And you're like, who?
I didn't know any of them, and I didn't care.
Me too!
She even tried to write, like, some smaller secondary villains of, like, vampires she's competing against. Like, there's one vampire with, like, a battle axe. Like, some big, strong, tough chick.
Yeah.
That's, like, enemies with Rain because Rain killed one of her friends. And it's like, I don't know who any of these people are.
Nope. If she'd taken a little more time, it could have worked.
Yeah. I think that's part of what reminded me of Gideon the Ninth. Gideon the Ninth is so brilliant because she establishes the relationship between Gideon and Harrowhark, the two most important characters in the story. Their relationship is super interesting. They have a mysterious past. Gideon is the comic relief, and she's also totally unaware and doesn't care about necromancy. So it doesn't matter if the reader doesn't know everything about necromancy either because Gideon doesn't give a shoot.
Yeah, it works. It works.
And Harrowhark is the opposite. And there's a big cast of characters. And they're all distinct.
Yep.
They're all likable.
And you slowly pick up all the different things about them, and it's not overwhelming.
No. And Gideon has, like, scenes, at least one scene, maybe two,
with just about everyone.
Like, we need stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where Araya is getting to know, or she's encountering these other vampires.
Yeah.
Because it would contextualize the fights she has with them later. Like when she has the fight at the end with Isaiah, I was like, is Isaiah the one with the limp?
Yeah.
I didn't even know who he was. Like you had to explain to me that he was a foil.
Yeah.
And you're totally right about that stuff. And that felt intentional. But it's like...
Hard to pick up on it.
I know.
Yeah.
Like why can't she make friends with Isaiah?
Yeah, it's bizarre. And even like all of the vampires are supposed to be living in the Moon Palace at the same time as her. And she does not run into a single one.
Nope.
For 4 months.
It feels like a huge empty castle that's just filled with she and Rain.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be filled with all of the vampires.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
And also Vincent apparently isn't supposed to visit her, but he does all the time. Or she can even leave the castle and visit him.
Yeah, as long as they're like back before
sunrise.
Daybreak.
Like
it's weird.
The rules are weird.
Yeah.
It needs, I don't know. That's also where it reminded me of Gideon the Ninth, where it's like in Gideon the Ninth, they all go to this castle and they have to learn how to become lictors, which are like immortal necromancers, basically. And there's like no rules. They don't have to work together. It's like each house there's like 9 houses. They have to figure out for their own houses how to become lictors. Like the rules are more established.
Yeah.
I feel like Fourth Wing tries to do that too. Where it's like, you go to school to become a dragon rider.
Yeah, you have to finish these benchmarks. You have to take these classes.
But it's brutal. Like, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Like, you could even kill a classmate to steal their dragon. That's fair. That's allowed. Because the strongest survive. But then occasionally she'll break the rules. Like, the main character, Violet, someone tries to assassinate her in the middle of the night. And then she survives, and they hold a jury later for, like, the person who tried to assassinate her.
You're like, wasn't the whole point that was okay?
I thought there were no rules.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar problem here.
Yep.
It's like, we need to define these boundaries better.
I agree. It just makes you feel kind of lost as a reader. You're like, okay, but what if someone just didn't?
Yeah. I also didn't realize that there was, like, apparently a Colosseum where they perform these trials. There's like 5 trials in 4 months. I keep saying that because it's weird. Why don't you do bizarre. 5 months? It also feels like the story takes place in like a week or 2.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. And I didn't understand that, like, wait, it's a spectator event? So, I don't know.
It was bizarre. Like, at the beginning of most of the challenges, they'd all go into a room and then be magically transported to, like, a Colosseum type thing with, like, spectators watching and cheering, and I don't know.
And every event, even though the events were different things, I don't remember what most of them were. Like, most of the challenges were supposed to reflect the goddess's ascension to power, which was cool.
Yeah.
But every fight boiled down to the same thing, which is Araya kills the bad guy.
But Rain has to help her because she's human and she can't quite do it. She's so close, but she can't quite do it.
Yeah. So it's a weird book where it simultaneously feels both creative and really sloppy.
Yes. Like, for the challenges kind of thing, okay, I love watching Survivor, the reality TV show.
Me too.
Part of why it's so fun is because you get a big cast of characters who all have different strengths and different weaknesses.
Yeah.
And you'll get a puzzle competition where the smartest people win every time. And then you'll get a strength-based one, and then an endurance-based one. And different people come out on top different times because you require different skill sets for each thing. This book would have benefited from that. Like, it would have been fun if there was one challenge where the vampires had to resist a glass of blood in front of them.
Yeah.
And Araya is like, I don't even want to drink human blood, and all of the other vampires lose. Or something like that.
That's a great idea. It would have made those scenes feel more distinct.
Yeah. And higher stakes, because you wouldn't know what to expect going in, instead of them being like, oh, let's work on our sword fighting again, because we're going to sword fight something.
Right. So this is a really important aspect of world building, where the world building is, one aspect of it is that you have to explain a skill that is unique to your world that the character has to learn over time, like a magical skill. And you have to keep that really simple, and that arc has to last throughout the entire story.
Yeah.
So for Araya, she starts out as a good sword fighter. Great. She could win in those types of battles, even against vampires, even though she's disadvantaged. But give her some different challenges that force her to, like, drink a vial of blood.
Yeah.
Which would be gross, but, whatever the challenge is.
Yeah.
She also learns a magical ability throughout the story. Kind of. but I don't even know what it is
No.
or how it even comes to help her in the end.
Well, also, yeah, that is weird and not done well.
Yeah. Like, it's a bad magic system.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Something like...
Because it just happens.
Yeah.
They're just magic or there's no magic.
She overcomes some internal trauma towards the end of the book where she's, like, dealing with being abandoned by... Feeling like she's abandoned by her family. They were all murdered. And then feeling betrayed by this past lover who tried to kill her because he was a vampire. And then she uses her magic because she's leveled up internally.
Yeah.
And then the magic she uses is, like, powerful light.
It's like night fire. It's like starlight, kind of, I thought.
Like some kind of fire
ability. But it's cold and hot at the same time.
It's not explained well.
No.
So this is the weird dichotomy of this
It did remind me of Greek fire from Percy Jackson, but that's just because it reminded me of it, not because it was good or did anything that Greek fire did.
Right.
Except burn for a really long time.
Yes. Without any fuel, apparently. I don't know. Whatever. It's weird because the internal arc of her at that moment does make sense and it feels pretty rewarding. Of her, like, embracing the fear that she's dealt with her whole life. She always tries to turn off her fear in order to overcome challenges. But then she embraces it to use her magic. But the magic, how does she use it and what's the cost and how does she, like, utilize it? It doesn't make any sense.
It's kind of like she's a Human Torch.
I guess so.
I don't know. It wasn't clear. Like, overcoming the inner obstacle of embracing your fear was interesting, but the consequences of doing that were boring.
Yeah.
Like, if it could have been cooler.
Yeah.
Could have been more clear and more exciting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Pretty good book.
It was a pretty good book.
I enjoyed it.
Like, I don't know. How they do that in Gideon the Ninth is you have to learn how to become a lictor. Like, Gideon doesn't have to learn any magical abilities. She just has to learn how to become a lictor. Yeah, she's just the bodyguard. That simplifies your story.
It does.
I don't know. I think you could take out her using a magical ability in this book and it wouldn't make any difference at all.
I agree completely.
Yeah. There was no... I don't know. There was no mystery either of, like, she's going to get this... The biggest mystery of this book is that Vincent's a bad guy and Rain's going to betray her. That's what's supposed to compel you to keep reading. But even that wasn't... finding out what Vincent was up to, his plans, was interesting enough. But, I don't know.
Yeah. It's just weak.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weak things in here.
There is. Because even the whole challenges of, like, surviving the Hunger Games wasn't super interesting. It felt like the challenges could happen at any time, and in between those moments, she's just, like, hanging out with Rain, going to the bar, or whatever.
Yeah. It's weird.
So the pacing was strange.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it what I wanted to talk about.
I think so, too. Is this your favorite book?
No.
Would you recommend this book?
Not for people like me. So
Good
no.
answer.
Is this one of your favorite books?
No, but I did really enjoy it.
Would you recommend it?
Probably.
Okay.
Maybe if I knew the person. If they like Twilight, yeah. Maybe,
yeah.
You know.
If they like Fourth Wing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
It's an interesting book to add to the vampire.
It definitely
list.
is.
It's so different than both our books, Salem's Lot and
very
Twilight.
modern.
Yeah, it's very modern.
We're kind of spanning a lot of time.
Yeah, it's
which
weird.
Which is good, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for watching.
Yep.
If you made it this far, please leave a like and a comment if you read this book.
For sure. Join us next week. We will be reading Dracula, because you can't do a vampire tier list without Dracula.
You got to.
Yep.
Thank you all for watching.
Bye.